committee meeting. Thank you, colleagues, for your attendance today. Andrew, what I'm going to do just now is take apologies and name some substitutes. Andrew, can you please help us out?
Yes, convener. So I have apologies from councillors Junaid Ashraf, Councillor Beveridge, and Councillor Linden. I also have apologies and substitutes. Councillor Castle has been substituted by Councillor Duffy, Councillor Curran being substituted by Councillor Paul Kelly, and Councillor Doherty being substituted by Councillor Quigley.
Members, is there any other apologies? No. I just the other thing is just to remind you all, I shouldn't need to do this, but just to remind you all, the chat bar there is for yourself to get access to that, and you know the system by now. And again, just to remind everybody, you are on a live stream, so be on your best behaviour, whatever that may well be. And we'll get the meeting started. And we're going into agenda item 1. I've got one declaration there from Councillor Jim Logue on the chat bar. Is there any other declarations?
I'll also make a declaration, sorry, Councillor Burrows.
Councillor Kelly?
Yeah, same item as Councillor Logue, item 30, as a substitute member of the City deal.
Okay, Councillor Kelly. Anybody else, any declarations?
Same for me.
Apologies.
Same for me, Bob. Sorry for interrupting. Councillor Graham.
Right, okay. What is that? Is that the same item? Councillor Graham?
Yes, it's the same item.
Okay, sorry, I missed that, but
Apologies, convener. I just need to get Councillor Logue to verbalise his declaration for the purposes of the meeting.
Okay, Councillor Logue,
please. In relation to item 30, which is the City deal item, and I declare an interest by virtue of being a member of the Glasgow City Regional Cabinet.
Okay, so that's 3 members that are included in there. Any other declarations? Andrew, have you got any email to you apart from Councillor Logue?
None, convener.
Okay, we'll get started then. Agenda item 2. 2A is the meetings of the minute. Then it's for approval for item 2A. Are you happy to agree that? Yep. I'm taking again silence is golden. I've got the nod with that. Item 2B is the same. I'm looking for an approval of item 2B. You happy with that? Yep. I'm getting the nod. Item 3 is an item about the local public holidays. Archie, you want to say a few words on this item 3?
Thanks, convener. Yeah, this is just the annual report that comes to this committee, setting out the proposed local public holidays for the benefit of businesses within North Lanarkshire.
Thank you for that, Archie. I don't see anybody in the chat bar. Can we agree? Is it for approval? Can we approve item 3? Yes.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you. Item 4, pages 15 to 22. It's the Armed Forces Covenant. Sarah Tennant, I believe you're going to take this one, Sarah, when you come.
Thanks, convener. Fiona, do you want to open, or are you happy for me to cover?
That's fine if you just want to cover the context of it, Sarah.
Okay. Thanks, convener. Good morning, members. So the paper really sort of reinforces, I guess, the council's commitment in respect of the Armed Forces Covenant, particularly in terms of ensuring that our workforce policies are inclusive, to ensure that members of our armed forces community are treated fairly when seeking to access employment, skills and training opportunities across North Lanarkshire. The Armed Forces Bill that's anticipated to be enacted in the end of 2021 will seek to further strengthen our obligation in this area. The report today really outlines the current activity. I don't propose to go over it in any detail. We do have a lot of activity around employability, skills and training, and in fact our recent Investors in People Silver accreditation commends our policies and approaches and the systems that we do have in place as a fair work employer. And the links that we have recently established with firm-based that you'll see throughout the report as well further strengthens that. What we'd like to do is take this a step further. So if I could draw your attention to section 2.2 of the report, and we would like to nominate the council for the Defence Recognition Scheme. to further strengthen the pledge and the commitment that we do have. There's 11 local authorities already have gold recognition, and we feel that we are in a good position to achieve this recognition ourselves. So we are seeking to take that forward in our forward plan. Section 2.3 does illustrate that we're currently benchmarking, as we do with all our employer accreditations and recognitions across different local authorities, so that we can learn from them what they do well and where they can share best practice with us. Our current activities really highlighted in section 2.6 to 2.15, and hopefully you can see that we do have a lot in place, but I think it's important to acknowledge today that we do need to improve our ability to track and measure our efforts and understand our community better across North Lanarkshire, as well as the challenges that they may face and experience. And you'll hopefully see it reflected in the report that we'll be seeking to do that in the forward plan. Section 2.16 in particular highlights how we propose to do this, working with our Employee Equalities Officer and our firm-based partners as well. And hopefully you can see that that will give us a solid baseline for our forward plan. Notably, 2.21 in the report seeks endorsement from committee to support a campaign between October and December that reinforces our commitment to raise awareness of our pledge and all the activity that's in place. And more importantly, we seek to survey our own workforce so that we understand the proportion of our workforce who are veterans, who are reservists, or are indeed supporting members of their family who are within the Armed Forces community. We've already compiled an improvement plan of current and planned activity, and we would ask for committee's support today just to take forward the proposals that are in the report. So thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Sarah, for that. That was a good comprehensive detail on the report. It's a good positive report for going forward. I was going to ask Councillor Cullen if he wanted to make a comment on it, as he's our Armed Forces representative, but I don't think he's on the call. I don't think he is. No, he isn't. On the chat bar, I don't see any questions coming in. On page 15, there are 5 recommendations for moving forward for noting. Are you happy to agree on that? Yes, thank you very much. Item 5, pages 23 to 30. It's a premature retirement scheme for teachers. Fiona Whittaker.
Thanks, Convener. So just by way of context for elected members, you'll be aware, if you're part of this committee, that we would always on an annual basis come and ask for your dispensation to apply the teachers' premature retirement scheme. However, the last 12 to 18 months and the pandemic have meant that we've got unique pressures on our teaching workforce. We've taken on a larger number of teachers than we would ordinarily in terms of keeping on our probationers, but also then taking on newly qualified teachers. And that puts us in a position where we have circa 400 teachers over and above what we would normally have within that teaching workforce now. That has been instrumental in helping us to weather the storm of the impact of things like self-isolation and to support the digital learning. However, it leaves the service obviously in a difficult position in terms of managing that going forward. And therefore, at this point, we're asking for dispensation to take the normal request that we make and actually put in place a scheme that will enable us to manage that teaching workforce over the next sort of 3 to 5 years. The scheme itself that sits in the actual document is no different to the one that we would normally ask you to give us dispensation on. But as I say, we're asking for it to be applied as a scheme going forward so that we can manage the unique pressures that we've got ahead of us. If I just take you to 1.4 within the report, you'll see some of the ways in which the premature retirement scheme is actually applied. And other areas that I want to highlight are the fact that we have plans ahead in terms of restructuring within the Education and Family Service. So this scheme will also support us going forward in terms of managing the pressures that will come from those restructures within the Education and Family Service. So I don't propose to go into the detail in any great degree. It's just to ask for your dispensation to apply this now as a scheme going forward.
Thank you, Fiona. I'm on agenda item 5. Chat bar has got no questions in there. Can we agree the approval on page 23, the 3 recommendations? Can you agree? Great, thank you very much. Agenda item 6, pages 31 to 36. Fiona Whittaker, I know Fiona Duddy's taking this. So you want to speak first, Fiona Whittaker? Are you happy for Fiona Duddy to come in?
Thanks, Convener. It's just to say that this is part of a series of reports that will now come more regularly to this committee, just to ensure that elected members have more visibility of health and safety and welfare, well-being issues in terms of staff. So there are 2 papers today that cover that, but it will be part of a more regular set of papers that will come to this committee to ensure there's oversight in this area.
Before I bring Fiona Duddy in, just for a couple of moments on it, it's just to say that it's an important report. It's an important item. In fact, this and the next agenda item are both the same. Section 2.4, you will note the union involvement with this, and which we all know is very, very important, and we know that. So Fiona Duddy, do you want to come in, say a few words on it?
Thank you, Convener. Good morning, everyone. So this report details the work that's been undertaken by a Short Life Working Group looking at violent incidents in the workplace, which have occurred between employees, service users, members of the public, etc. So the work that's been undertaken has been a critical review of the processes and procedures that were already in place to identify what was working, what could be done better, and anything new that could be implemented to prevent incidents and protect employees. I would point out at this stage that whilst this is clearly a concerning issue, it's not unique to North Lanarkshire Council, with a very similar picture in other local authorities. However, over the last 5 to 10 years, we have seen a trend for increase in incidents in this area. There are also clear links to specific areas such as absence, mental health, etc. And this forms part of a wider effort looking at how we protect staff, retention of staff and absence. It's also important to note that our violent incidents can differ slightly where, for example, a service user has a pre-existing condition and say, for example, dementia, and they've been verbally abusive to one of our employees. It's still a violent incident, but it has a slightly different aspect to that of, for example, a service user's family member being present at a visit and being verbally abusive. All these incidents are recorded as they all still constitute a violent incident. Within the report, 1.1 will show you the Health and Safety Executive's definition of work-related violence. So any incident in which a person is abused, threatened or assaulted in circumstances relating to their work. 1.2 is a table which illustrates the increase in incidents over the past 10 years. It should also be noted that verbal abuse and threats are the most common type of incident. Physical attacks are comparatively rare. 1.3 details the makeup of the group who looked at this topic, so health and safety, HR, employee relations and trade union representatives from Unison and EIS. The remit of the group is shown in 1.4. 2.2 shows the areas that were critically reviewed to understand where we are at with our current mitigating measures and where we can enhance and improve them. 2.3 illustrates consideration was also given to previous work the safety team had done around the topic, and an EIS report on violent incidents and a Unison survey was also taken into account. So you can see there was a lot of work and effort put into establishing the correct direction of travel going forward. The final point in this area of the report to note is 2.4, which covers the group's proposal to align the council standards with the Unison End Violence at Work Charter and work on mutual goals. The group then put their findings into what a programme for successful violence prevention would look like, and this is shown in Appendix 1. I'll just refer you to this and cover off a couple of the key points within that. So number 1 was the need for senior management buy-in and participation. So we already have that from the corporate management team, and we would look for the same from committee today. Point 4 was to publicly express resolve and determination to protect the safety of all staff, using our corporate communications team to make clear our commitment to protecting employees. Point 15 was a focus on training so that each employee is provided with a high level of training, which is specific for their role. Point 20, sharing information on people known for violent behaviour to prevent harm from occurring. And point 23, to instil confidence in all our employees to know how to react to a situation and how to get help, etc. So you'll see from the report There's a lot of work to be progressed, nothing that can't be achieved, and all contributing to a safer working environment for our employees. I would emphasise that this is an opportunity for us to enhance the processes and procedures we already have, as well as the chance to implement new measures. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Fiona, for that presentation. Thank you very much. I have one councillor on the chat bar, Councillor Bob Burgess. Bob?
Thanks, convener. Yeah, Fiona, that's a good report, but we have a high percentage of female employees. I would like to know, got a percentage list of violence, i.e. for the pupils on teachers, men on men, women on women, men on women. Do we have a figure on that where we can break it down as to where it is and how violent it is?
Fiona?
Yeah, the group, when they've looked at the statistics, we have broken it down into the occupation roles where violent incidents are occurring. We haven't split it by male, female, but we do obviously know we can split it down again to see whether it's an employee in a service user, an employee in a pupil, you know, an employee or a member of the public. So we do know where our areas are that need to be targeted first. And you know, you've mentioned schools, so obviously our ASN schools are in that list, and as our primary schools where we have ASN employees. So we do have that information. I certainly can look at breaking it down a bit further to look at male and female. But as you say, the role itself probably lends itself to there'll be quite a high population of females within that group.
Thank you, Fiona. I think, Bob, there's more work to be done on this, as you said, with some of the statistics, and we can get that done. We'll work on that one, Bob, and get that out to all the members.
Convener, thanks for that, Fiona.
Okay.
And as I say, I'm more interested, not more interested, but interested in what's happening in our high schools, and I'd like to see some kind of figures on what's happening there, because that's where it's starting, and I feel that we should be looking at that in an important factor. Thank you.
Oh, thank Bob. Another Councillor Paul Kelly.
Thanks, convener. And Fiona, I think it's actually, as Bob said at the start, a very important report. And what's I think a very positive thing is you've got the outcomes that you've agreed, you know, in terms of way forward, which when you read through them are actually, you know, as a positive step. Just is there any reason you found for why there's been an increase of about, I'm guessing, 10%? I know there's been a drop off because more people are also working from home because of the pandemic. Also, do we include within this the online incidents, so where, you know, people are dealing with the public and emails are coming in where they're verbally abusing the person, which can be quite distressing for them, or there is an online, is that included? And going on to Councillor Burgess's point, it would actually be quite good to just get the actual stats for the numbers that are involved in this, because I know you've given percentages, but the actual number of our staff that do suffer unacceptable violence at work in any form. Thank you.
Fiona, there was 3 parts to Councillor Kelly's question.
Yep, I was writing them down so I don't miss any.
Right,
so,
good.
The increase in numbers, we have done campaigns over the past years to encourage people to report violent incidents so that we can identify where they are. So that has a part to play, I think. We also, a number of years back, about 11, 12 years ago, we introduced a more up-to-date instant reporting system, which has made it easier for people to report. So there is also that aspect. From the second part of your question around online, yes, the Health and Safety Executive definition that's in that report applies. We would want to know whether it was something online, whether it was an incident somebody had taken a phone call and had any threat, any abusive language, etc. And we do have them on CIRIS, the Council's instant reporting system. So we do encompass every aspect of this that we can. And obviously the group have looked at all of that when they've looked at the statistics. And obviously the input from the trade unions has been really helpful for us as well, when the group have done their work. So going forward, this will be very much a council-wide programme of work. The third part of your question, the statistics, yes, that's not an issue. We can certainly get a report back through committee to give an illustration of where this is happening and what types of incidents, etc., are occurring.
I think, sorry, Councillor Kelly, did you want to come back in?
Just a very quick thanks very much, Convener. And it's just specific around things like emails, believe it or not, because you actually, I know council elected members will know this, that sometimes people can be very upset and staff have to actually, when you're passing on, have to deal with very rare, but times where some of the language can be, wrong and it could be classed and should be classed as violence at work, just to get that reassurance that staff are supported to report that and also get the support necessary.
I think what we've picked up there, Paul, is that online capture is there, which is important. And I think I'm picking up from the members about getting further details, some information from this. And I'll speak to Fiona Duddy and Fiona Whittaker about this and progress this forward for you all. I hope that you're happy with that. I don't see any other questions in the chat bar. Recommendations is on page 31. It's for approval. There's 6 items. Are you happy to agree these? Yep. Thank you very much. Item 7 is on page 37 to 62. A report again. It's a link in section 2.3 with the unions. It's here to be noted, but Fiona Whittaker, you want to say a few words? I think Fiona Duddy is going to speak on it. Do you want me to go straight to Fiona?
Yeah, it's just to set out what the policy and the strategy will be for the forthcoming year in that area. So I think Fiona's just going to touch on a few points. Convener, I know we've got a big agenda, so she'll just very briefly summarise what that's about.
Okay, Fiona Duddy, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Convener. So this report covers the proposed safety strategy for the Council 21-22 and an updated policy document to reflect the insourcing of CLNL to the Council. So covering the strategy first, this has been written in line with the Council ambition of building a workforce for the future. If we want to deliver on our ambition, we need a workforce who are healthy and safe whilst going about their daily role and demonstrate our commitment to our employees. This needs to be led from the top, and the strategy has 5 priority work streams with a supporting action plan to illustrate how we can achieve this. The 5 work streams are leadership, occupational safety and wellbeing, safety culture, risk management and performance measurement. Appendix 1 within the report shows the strategy document and gives some background into where we are at and where we aim to be. Section 3 lists the overall aims of the strategy, and Section 4 gives you an insight into some of the work carried out by the Council Safety and Wellbeing team. Section 5 details information on each of the work streams and what they mean for us as an organisation. Section 6 covers the proposed action plan for each of the work streams and planned timeframes. You'll note there is a fairly short time frame on the strategy. This is to allow for some key work to be undertaken, such as the safety culture survey, which will help steer for future work. This also aligns with the mental health strategy for the Council, and both will be merged into one overall strategy going forward. So the intention would be to come back to committee next year with a strategy that sets out for the following 3 years. I'll just cover off the second part of the report, which is the updated safety and wellbeing policy. This is shown in Appendix 2 within the report. So a slight amendment was made to reflect that CLNL have now been insourced to the Council and to ensure our policy remains up to date. The policy is a legal requirement, so it's important that it reflects an accurate picture of the organisation. It's split into 3 areas: the statement of intent, which is signed by the Chief Executive, illustrating the commitment to ensuring health and safety in the workplace; the positions and roles of the people in our organisation who have specific responsibilities for health and safety; and finally, the practical arrangements as to how we will achieve this, for example, ensuring our workforce are trained, carrying out risk assessments, etc. So there will be further revisions made to the policy to include an updated structure chart and any other relevant changes. I'm happy to answer questions on either topic.
Thank you, Fiona. I said at the beginning that the 2 items were an important reports coming through. This one, the safety and wellbeing strategy. This is the start of it. There'll be a lot more work done next year on this as we move forward. I don't see any questions in the chat bar. The recommendations are for noting, and they're on page 37. Are you happy to agree then? Yes, thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 8 is pages 63 to 70. The report is an updated committee report. It's for noting. Elaine, you want to say a few words on it?
Thanks, Convener.
Can't hear you, Elaine.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So the report provides committee with the details outcome of the...
Elaine, you're breaking up again. You're there, but you're distant. I'm sorry I'm coming in, but try again, or maybe put the headphones on.
That's okay, convener. I've had connection problems and I've been thrown out of this meeting twice already this morning. So I think what I'll try is stop my video, see if that...
Take your best. Yep.
Okay, is the sound better now?
That sounds better, Elaine. Yep.
I'll just keep my camera off then if that's okay. So
Okay.
apologies. This report provides committee with the details of the outcome of the COVID recovery budget that was progressed over the summer in line with the process agreed by full council at the budget meeting on the 2nd of March this year. It's a summary of briefings that were presented to the cross-party recovery group as the work progressed. So in that respect, the report doesn't contain any new information, but I'll just highlight some of the key points to note. Table 1 shows the financial forecast, and there were total resources of 69.8 million and forecast costs of around 60 million, leaving a balance for one-off investments of 9.152 million. So 2.13 section shows total council resources of 15.7 million were contributed to the funding position, and that was made up of 6.5 from general fund resources and the rest from identified education and families budgets, largely to support the recruitment of newly qualified teachers. Costs around 60 million identified on the basis of Scottish Government information at the time the plan was developed, but these costs are now being reviewed subject to changing COVID guidance. About half of the costs relate to education recovery, with the other material costs noted in the report to include the costs of lost income for active and creative communities and additional building cleaning costs. There's also a 5 million contingency which will remain under review as the year progresses. There were a number of existing commitments identified at an early stage, and they're shown at Appendix 1. After allowing for these, there was a balance of 3.78 million left for further investment, and proposals were brought forward which were evaluated, and those that were agreed are shown in Appendix 2. They centred around 3 themes which were agreed with the recovery group, being Recover NL, business support and employability. The evaluation methodology, I won't go into, it's described in the report. It shows how proposals were ranked and how resources were ultimately allocated. And final point, convener, is as with any other budget, spend will be monitored and reported back through CMT and committee in the usual way.
Thank you, Elaine. Again, there should be no surprises for us seeing this report. We've been on the flow here with it since March this year. Agenda item 8, I do not see anybody in the chat bar, colleagues. The recommendations is for noting on page 63. Are you happy to agree that? Yes, thank you. Agenda item 9, pages 71 to 76, is the annual accounts outturn. Again, this is for noting. Elaine, you want to say a few words on it?
The annual accounts have now been reported to the audit scrutiny panel on the 2nd of September. So this report sets out some information for this committee. It sets out the level of general fund surplus and how that was made up. The council reported a surplus for the year of over 68 million, and when that was added to the brought forward reserve balance from 1920, it takes the general fund reserve to 116.751 million, and this balance has been carried forward into 21-22. It's represented by 36 million of COVID commitments and regular service committed resources of 35.8 million, and they're detailed at table 1 in the report. The report also explains the movement in the outturn since the last reported position to this committee at period 12, and you'll see on table 2 on page 73 there was a movement of around 5 million, which is explained in that table. Section 2.3 sets out equivalent details for the HRA, and finally Section 2.4 highlights other issues that are included in the accounts, and the only major one that I would bring to your attention is the ongoing uncertainty over the impact of COVID on property values, which have been included in the accounts.
Thank you, Elaine. We're on agenda item 9. My chat bar shows me no questions have come in. The recommendations are for noting on page 71. Are you happy to agree with those recommendations?
Agreed.
Yep, thank you. Agenda item 10. This is pages 77 to 82. The report's for noting, but Elaine, do you want to come in and say a few words on the report? Thank you.
Thanks, Convener. First of all, council tax recovery has increased by 1.1% in comparison to last year, and it's now broadly in line with pre-pandemic performance levels back in 1920. Collection of non-domestic rates is down 1.8% on last year, which is not surprising, perhaps given the continued impact of COVID on the business sector. But I would focus attention on section 2.5, which gives the latest position on the Scottish Welfare Fund. It reports the number of awards made to the end of July and the split of these between crisis and community care grants. The award rate on crisis grants is 73.4% and 84.8% on community care grants, which is broadly in line with what we would expect given the priority level on the fund is currently set at medium. In comparison to last year, we've seen an increase in spend from this same point in the financial year of 14%. Section 254 highlights that given that there was an underspend from last year carried forward, spend against the full budget is currently sitting at 31%, or at the end of July was 31%. And again, that's largely where we would expect to be at this point in the year. But it is worth noting that spend on the fund does tend to be higher in the second half of the year. The Welfare Fund is also responsible for administering the Scottish Government's self-isolation grant, and the table in section 256 shows the number of applications which have been received, and you'll see that those have increased, or at the point covered by the report have increased in line with the number of cases in the North Lanarkshire area. The number of applications that result in awards is currently around 50%. And the main reason for rejection is that the applicant isn't on a qualifying benefit or within the income threshold, which is set within the Scottish Government scheme. Finally, there's commentary in the report on DHP, and the main point to note here is that Scottish Government provided additional funding, increasing the total budget to 839,000. And this can be used to support tenants in receipt of housing benefit or that receive housing costs through universal credit if their ability to pay rent is affected. So we will liaise with housing solutions and housing associations to identify these tenants that can be offered some temporary support from this fund, and it would be intended that a referral to the financial inclusion team is made to help tenants in the longer term.
Thank you, Elaine. Agenda item 10 on the chat bar. There doesn't show any questions. Sorry. Councillor Carricker? Tracy? Tracy, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here. I keep getting chucked out the meeting. Yeah, it's with regards to the discretionary fund. I've got an inquiry about that right now. The constituent's telling me that they can't get by actually putting in their national insurance number. It just keeps kicking them back out. Just interested because you've said like the 50%. It's to do with them not meeting the criteria. Have you heard any more situations like that where they just can't, you know, like get through the application?
Elaine?
Councillor Carricker, is this in relation to...
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Elaine, can you hear you a wee bit? Try again.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Right. Councillor Carricker, you said the discretionary fund, is it discretionary housing payments?
Oh, I beg your pardon, I mean the isolation one. Sorry.
Okay, no, I'm not aware of an issue that concerns that, but if you contact me after the meeting, I'll certainly look into it.
I will do. Thanks very much, Lynn.
You've got that offer there, Tracy. Just take up that offer and we'll take it forward. Agenda item 10, there's no other questions in the chat bar. The recommendation is on page 77. Are we happy to agree?
Agree.
Agreed. Okay. Agenda item 11. Colleagues, 11, 12, 13 and 14 are general debt write-offs. 3 of them have been through the parent committee, but I'll take them as an individual as we go forward, starting with agenda item 11. Elaine, you want to say a few words? It covers the this particular section. Thank you. Financial Resource Committee. Thanks.
So this is a request for approval to write off debts that are now deemed to be uncollectible, and it's to a value of 295,000. The table at 2.1 shows that there's been an increase in the value of uncollectible debt in comparison to last year, but I would want to point out that the total of 295 to be written off this year is actually in line with previous years, and it's the comparator for 1920 that's artificially low, given that there was less focus on analysing debts last year as staff and revenues and benefits teams were redeployed into other services to support the COVID response. So the request is in line with what we would normally see, Convener.
Okay. Is there any questions? The chat bar is empty at the moment.
Convener, no. I think Councillor Burgess put his name in the chat bar before I put in agenda item 11 into the chat bar, so I think he may want to come in.
Yes, I see that. I was following your agenda item, but Bob was just a bit quick on it. But that's good on you, Bob. And you come, Bob. Councillor Burgess.
Yeah, I used to watch Roy Rogers.
Aye. See, some people will ask who's Roy Rogers, but never mind. That's another one.
Or Trigger. But anyway, I'd like to ask Elaine. It's just a general question. Is there anywhere in our system that we ask for advance payments or deposits on any of the business that we do?
Elaine?
In relation to this report, Councillor Burgess, I'm sorry, but I'm not sure that I understand your question.
Yeah, you want to clarify that, Bob? There's just because you mentioned business, just clarify that.
Yeah, it's just basically across the board. Is there anywhere that we actually take a deposit, or say, for instance, we're landlords to something like 30,000, 40,000 houses. Basically, the private landlords have all got a month's rent in advance. Are we anywhere in that sequence of things whereby we take advance payments for anything across these losses?
Okay, Elaine.
So this is in relation to housing. Can you hear me okay? I'm really
Elaine, we're having a real problem hearing you, Elaine. Real problem. Try again.
Right, I'm really sorry. I don't know what's going on at this end. Is that?
Yeah. I can hear you a bit better now, but go ahead.
Okay. The losses that have been written off in this report refer to housing benefit overpayments, and it's largely where tenants that are in receipt of housing benefit have had a change of circumstance but not advised the council. So by the time we get up-to-date information, it can be very difficult to contact the tenant. They may have moved on. They may then be in employment, not be in employment, whereby it's very difficult to collect these overpayments. So really, that's what the write-off is at this stage, Councillor Burgess. If you have any more specific questions around deposits and rent, contact me and I'll answer you in conjunction with my housing colleagues.
Yeah, that's the Councillor Burgess.
Yeah, Convener, that's fine. I'll get back to Elaine on that. It's just basically in general, it's not just on housing. It's in an overall situation as to where we've maybe lost money. But I'll go back to Elaine directly. Thank you.
Do the email direct, Councillor Burgess. That's perfect. Agenda item 11, the recommendations for approval is on page 83. Are you happy to agree those?
Agreed.
Yes. Agenda item 12 is a remit from the Adult Health and Social Care Committee. It's been through their committee. It's here for approval. Are you happy to agree that report? Yes. Agenda item 13, it's the same. It's coming from Housing and Regeneration Committee. It's been through the committee and it's here for approval. Pages 91 and 94. Are you happy to agree that report? Yes.
Agreed.
The last one of this is agenda item 14, pages 95 to 98, the remit from Education and Families. Are you happy to agree that report?
Agreed.
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 Item 15 at pages 99 to 106 is a new report coming to this committee. It's with 3 pilots and we're one of the pilots. I just want to make a comment to you before I bring in Elaine. Section 2.3 relates to what we call the RAG system, the coloured system. Now, if you're using your hard copy, you won't have a coloured system. If you're online, that's fine. I'll be speaking to the office to see if we can fix this in some way, and that's important for you to follow. The second part of it, before Elaine comes in section 2.4 and 6.2, there was a link to an Excel spreadsheet that was going to give you a lot more information. Now, wasn't able to open it. Andrew this week has sent out a copy to you all. If you haven't seen it or you're difficulty getting access to it, if you get into it and there's any questions for Elaine, email Elaine direct after the meeting. But if you've read it and you've got a question, that is fine as well. There's not a problem with that. So Elaine, do you want to take us through agenda item 15?
Thank you. I hope sound is holding up for me.
No.
No. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
It appears to be when I come on and off mute, so I'll stay off mute and hopefully I'll hold up for the rest of the agenda items.
Right.
Right. Business Solutions, as you said, Convener, is standing up the strategic performance framework, and Financial Solutions has been selected as one of 3 pilots, the other 2 being Business Solutions themselves and Regulatory and Waste Solutions. So the report presents a summary of all the performance indicators for Financial Solutions and shows trends and in comparison to prior years with explanations for movements. So committees asked to note the performance at Appendix 1 and also to review the information presented and identify if any further information is required as part of the pilot exercise. So there's 2 purposes to this report. Appendix 1 shows that most of the indicators for Financial Solutions are either on target or surpassing target at this stage. The only reds where performance is below target are shown at the top of page 106. First of all, the percentage of income due from non-domestic rates that was received within the year. Up to and including 1920, this indicator was within target. There's reduced performance in 2021 of 92.6% against a target of 95.8%, but that's entirely due to the COVID impact on the business community. The second indicator that is highlighted as red is the percentage of invoices paid within 30 days of receipt. You'll see that performance dipped in 1920, and that was due to the service supporting other priorities at that time, and also the early impacts of COVID that hit towards the end of that financial year. But the results in 2021 are again below target, and that really reflects the impact of the move to home working and the number of suppliers that continue to provide paper invoices. But I'm happy to report that you can see from the graph that performance in 21-22 is showing a significant improvement as we've managed to work around some of these issues. I'm happy to take questions on the indicators themselves, or to take comments back to Business Solutions on the process as part of the pilot.
Thank you, Elaine. Agenda item 15. I'm looking at the chat bar, and there's no questions there. The agenda is on page 99 to 106. The recommendations are on page 99 to 100. Are you happy to approve the recommendations?
Agreed.
Yes, thank you. Agenda item 16, pages 107 to 116. It's a report, an updated report for noting. Elaine, it's the review of the 21-22 Norwood budget savings.
So this report gives an update of savings of 36 million, which were approved across 21-22 and 22-23. Firstly, the current year 21-22 savings, 80% are projected to be achieved within year. The majority of the rest of these will be achieved but are delayed beyond the current financial year, and that leaves a small balance of less than 5% or just below $1 million, which may not be achieved at this stage. And again, largely these are COVID related. They refer to the digital classroom saving and school cleaning savings. There is a further 400,000 in school transport still to be achieved, but that is under review by the service at the moment. The report also highlights savings that have been reprofiled, and these were discussed and agreed at the relevant committees, education and adult social care, and these are highlighted for your information at section 213 on pages 108 and 109. An update next on savings that have previously been reported as unachieved, and these relate to financial years 19-20 and 20-21. In 19-20, there remains a balance of 757, which may not be achieved, and in 2021, the balance is 467,000. Where services have identified savings that may not be achievable, they've now been asked to find a recurring solution to make the permanent recurring change, and that will be reported to their own service committees. I'm happy to take questions on that, Convener.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you for that. We're on agenda item 16. I'm looking at the chat bar. There's no questions coming in for you, Elaine. Can we agree the recommendations for noting on page 107?
Great.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Item 17, it's another report update on pages 117 to 126. And Elaine, you want to say a few words on it?
Yep, projecting still okay, volume.
Yep.
At this early stage of the year, these reports are at period 4, and the council monitoring position across revenue is projecting a surplus of 10.8 million at this stage, and that's shown in table 2 on page 119. Education and families are projecting an underspend of 627,000, and that's mainly due to overspends on ESM provision and transport, which is more than offset by the saving generated by the 1140 staffing model. There's a small underspend across chief execs projected, and that's down to continued management action to curtail non-essential expenditure and to curtail recruitment where possible. And that saving is managing the in-year reprofiling of the digital NL saving and returning a small underspend over and above that. Other underspends at this stage, there are 2. Firstly, there's an overachievement on loan debt reprofiling savings, and that, together with reduced borrowing costs linked to the community investment programme, totals 4 million. The second saving is an underspend on budget assumptions, which is around £6 million. And that mainly relates to the saving that we are seeing coming through from non-domestic rates relief on leisure properties. And in addition to that, a review of active and creative communities since insourcing has allowed us to reduce cost pressures. So these two large items make up the 10 million underspend. The COVID recovery budget has been presented earlier in the agenda, and the COVID costs are included in this budget monitoring position. Work's underway to assess these in light of latest guidance, but at this stage we are projecting the COVID elements to be fully spent. As noted in my previous report, 80% of savings this year are expected to be achieved, with the majority of what remains being delayed but still achievable in the next financial year. At this stage, the Change Management Fund is at a level sufficient to cover costs of all savings that have been approved to date, and that's a strong position for the council to be in moving forward to the next budget process. Finally, I would highlight the risk section at 263. It highlights the current position on funding for pay awards. The budget set in March 21 this year allowed for a 2% pay award at a cost of 9.9 million. The medium-term financial plan, which will be presented to the next Policy and Strategy Committee, will bring that up to 2.5% in 21-22, but there is still a risk that the funding set aside for the pay awards will be insufficient and as yet still to settle.
Okay, Elaine, you're doing well by keeping the sound on, so we all heard you clear there. Agenda item 17, I don't see any questions in the chat bar with there. It's on page 117, there's the recommendations. You happy to agree with those recommendations? Yeah,
Agreed.
yeah, I'm getting the nod, yeah. Agenda item 18, pages 127 to 138. It's a report here for noting. Elaine, the revenue budget monitoring for the chief execs and other corporate services.
This report feeds into the council summary, which I've just gone through on the last agenda item. So I don't have any further comments to make on this report.
Okay. Colleagues, agenda item 18, have we got any questions or nothing in the chat bar? Okay, the recommendations is on page 127. Are you happy to agree those? Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. Agenda item 19, pages 139 to 146 is a capital programme. Here for noting, it's Elaine, do you want to say a few words on it for period 4?
Yep, again, period 4, we're at a very early stage in the financial year, but I would highlight that the General Service Programme is currently sitting at over 136 million, with a further 105 million on the HRA programme. So that gives total community investment for this financial year of 242 million. Across that value of budget, we're expecting at this stage to be 10.7 million under budget, and that's within the HRA area. They're projecting spend of 10 million below budget, and it's a result of COVID-related impacts on suppliers and supply chain issues. Section 225 here highlights some of these issues in relation to the general fund. The Capital Delivery Group has been considering the risks associated with the programme due to supply chain issues and the impact of COVID restrictions, and it's recommended that the programme is reprofiled. So a report identifying the changes will go to Policy and Strategy at the next meeting, and the updated reprofiling, if approved, will be incorporated in the next budget monitoring report to this committee.
Okay, Elaine, thank you for your comments there. Agenda item 19. There's no questions in the chat bar. The recommendations on page 139. Are you happy to agree those?
Agreed.
Agreed. Elaine, you've got 2 other items to do, and then we move on. You'll be glad of that. It's agenda item 20. It's pages 147 to 156. It's a quarterly report for noting on Treasury Management. Elaine, you want to make some comments?
Yeah, just briefly on this one to highlight that the overall net borrowing position at the end of the first quarter is 830 million, and that's an increase of 7.8 million since the last reported position. And the main reasons for that is that we have made principal repayments a lot against long-term loans totaling over 11 million. But more significantly, there's been a large movement in the reduction of short-term borrowing. And the reason for that reduction is the fact that the council held significant cash balances because of funding that was provided in advance by Scottish Government. So we were able to use those cash balances instead of undertaking temporary borrowing. There's a corresponding reduction in the level of cash held. And again, that's linked to my previous comment. It's as a result of these balances being used to repay short-term borrowing. Prudential indicators show that capital expenditure is higher than was estimated when the indicators were set last year. And that reflects the revised capital investment programme that was approved through committee in March. There is a loan charge saving of 6.1 million, and that's 4 million across the general fund, which ties into the council summary report, and a further 2.1 million saving for HRA. All other prudential indicators are complied with, and no further issues are highlighted.
Thank you, Elaine. Agenda item 20. I'm looking for the chat bar. There's nobody in the chat bar. The recommendations are on page 147. Are you happy to agree those recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed. The last item on finance is on agenda item 21. It's page 157, 180. It's a similar report to the last one, although this is the annual report for 2021. It goes into a lot of detail. That detail has already came to you at the committee. So what I'm looking to do is I'm looking for any questions from the committee on the report. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask on the agenda item 21? No, there's nothing in the chat bar. Can we agree the recommendations on page 157?
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you, Elaine, for all those items, a considerable number of them. Thank you very much. Agenda item 22, moving on to procurement, pages 181 to 218. It's an annual procurement report here for noting. James McKinstry, just before James comes in, just to say that there's about 37 pages on this report. 22 of them have got a lot of detail, a lot of I think it's spreadsheet details, a whole lot of them. So if there's any questions, we can pick up on it if relevant. James.
Thank you, Convener. As you say, it's an annual procurement report that comes to committee this time every year. It gives details of kind of performance in procurement for the last 12 months, and importantly, it gives a forward plan for the main areas that we'll be looking to procure as we go forward. As you mentioned, there's a lot of appendices in the report which provides that detail, also provides details of performance indicators. I'm not intending to go through the appendices any great detail. There's a lot of detail there, but as you look at the appendices, you'll see, against the backdrop of the last 18 months or so of having to manage a pandemic, the procurement activity has actually performed well across the council. In addition to the procurement plan, we also bring a procurement strategy to committee, and that'll be coming to committee at your next cycle. What we do with this procurement plan is we publish this. We also send it to the Scottish Government, That does two things. It makes sure that we comply with our statute's requirement, but it also makes sure that we're continuing to advise the market of the things that North Lanarkshire will be looking to procure. A couple of points I want to say just in my final comments. Committee is aware that we got a really good PSIP assessment a couple of years ago, and I just want to advise the committee that we continue to engage with Scotland Excel on a regular basis, and that has been very useful for us, particularly as we've been having to manage all the challenges that we've faced over the last 18 months.
Thank you, James. Very comprehensive report there for you, members. It's covered under agenda item 22. I'm looking at the chat bar. There are no questions in the chat bar. The recommendations are on page 181. Are we happy to agree those recommendations? Yes. Thank you. Agenda item 23, pages 219 to 224. Now, Ian Martin will take a few words on this, but I just want to make a couple of comments. First of all, I'm a bit disappointed that this item has come back to committee. Your members may reflect that in March this year, we had spent a fair bit of time on this item, and I think the person who made the application at that time had well advanced notice that he could have applied if he'd wanted to for the full strip of land. He didn't want to do that, so he's back in. So it really, in a way, it shouldn't be at committee unless, of course, any elected members have a concern about it, as they have a right to do, and I've not got a problem with that. But given that, that's why it's here today. So I'm expecting an amendment with this. It might not be, but what I'll do is I'll bring in Ian Martin, and then we can take it from there to see where it goes. Ian.
Thank you, Convener. Following the committee decision in March, the owner of 30 Woodlands Drive has approached the council seeking to acquire an additional 28 square metres of land immediately to the rear of his property and shown on the plan at Appendix B. There's also a plan attached to Appendix A which shows the original area that was approved at committee in March, just to put it into some perspective. In line with these types of applications, a consultation exercise was undertaken with the relevant services and no objections were raised. The four local members were also consulted, and one local member had expressed concerns over the proposal, and these are outlined and addressed at section 2.2.3 within the report. As there are no objections from an operational perspective, and the title check has confirmed there's no issues that would prevent the sale of the land, it's recommended that the land be sold to the neighbouring owner on the terms outlined within the report.
Okay, thank you. I see Councillor Stubbs has got a comment. Alan?
Do you have an amendment, Bob? Do you want to see that first before we talk about it? It's just a minor amendment.
Yeah, has Andrew got it? Yeah.
Yep, I'll put that up now, Convener.
Put it up then, yeah.
Can I just check you can see that, Convener?
Yeah, I can see it. I hope everybody else is the same. Anybody who can't see it, let Andrew know. Okay, Alan, you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I'll be brief, Bob. Like you, disappointed to see that we're back discussing this same area. And as I mentioned during the last debate, I suspect that we'll be having discussions on the woods behind Woodlands Drive for quite some time, as more neighbours get to realise that they can expand their gardens for not a lot of money, to the detriment of the wider community. As Ian mentioned, when you look at the plan, it's quite clear that it's not infringing any further into the woods. It is only just joining up that bit, and it does make you wonder why this particular part of land wasn't included in the original application. And we can surmise, but nobody can know why. All I'm looking to do is to have a little bit more consideration given to a tree preservation order on the healthy, ancient, multi-stemmed tree that's on this particular patch of land that's proposed for disposal in this report. Consult with the local community to see what their opinions are on the tree as well, and the adjacent one that's mentioned before any disposal is approved. And then on Titan 2, it would simply be that if the officers have a look at it again and decide that there shouldn't be a TPO, then fair enough, then we move on. But if they look at it and speak to the community and there should be a TPO, then let's get that on and then agree to the sale along with the tree protected from being chopped down when the land is sold off. It's fairly straightforward. I hope it's not controversial or something that we need to divide on, Bob. It's just making sure that we're not doing away with trees that are hundreds of years old for no particular reason. I'll leave it there, and I can respond later on if there's any issues, any comments.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Alan. Do I have a seconder for Councillor Cubbs' amendment?
Councillor Carricker was seconding the amendment, convener.
Councillor Carricker, do you want to say anything to that?
Just happy to second the amendment, Bob, for the reasons highlighted by Alan. Thanks.
Okay. I'm opening it up now to any questions. Is there any questions from anybody on it?
Bob, Jim Loach here. Could we hear the officer in response to the contents of the amendment first?
Okay, Councillor Logue. Ian Martin.
Yeah, the tree on the site's already been looked at by the councillors, our board team, and they've acknowledged that obviously there's a tree on the site, but it's not of such value to insist on the tree being retained, and that's noted at 2.2.3 within the report. So I mean, it has been looked at.
Okay. Archie Aiken.
Thanks, convener. I just wanted to check with Councillor Stubbs in terms of the amendment. If consideration is given to a tree preservation order, and whatever the outcome of that is he asking committee today to approve the disposal, or is the expectation that this would come back to committee? I just wanted some clarity there.
Councillor Stubbs.
Yeah, Bob. No, I don't expect it to come back to committee. If members could just be updated with the result of any decision that is taken. But all I'm asking is that we are agreeing to dispose of the land. Is this part of the amendment? That's agreed. But simply before it is signed off and passed over to the new owner, that we look at and speak to local community. You know, even just the residents of you know, the area round about, to say, what do you think about Shatton history before the land is sold off? That's simply it.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to the vote, but first of all, we'll sum up. Alan? Is the amendment opposed, Bob? Has MD moved the report as the original report, or are we just going to go with amendments? No, I'm going to move the original, the motion for the administration, Alan. So you've got the chance to sum up on your amendment.
Convener, just before Councillor Stubbs comes in, I just need a seconder for your.
Yeah, I'm going to that. I'm looking for a second for that.
I'll second that.
Yeah, Ian McNeil's going to second that. Sorry, Andrew, that's what I was just coming to. Sorry, Councillor Stubbs, that late part of it, I was just coming into that. Councillor Stubbs. We're in a bit of a peculiar situation, Bob. I've not really got anything to sum up because nobody's spoken against my amendment or in favour of the report, so I don't really have anything to address. Okay, there's not a problem with that. I said I'm moving the original motion. It's been seconded by Ian for the information that's in the report and the additional question about the tree preservation, which I believe has been answered by the officer. So I believe that the motion should go ahead. Okay, Andrew, let's go now to the vote.
Thank you, convener. We have an amendment by Councillor Stubbs and a motion by Councillor Burrows. If you could indicate when I call your name. Councillor Burgess.
Motion.
Councillor Burrows.
Motion.
Councillor Campbell.
Motion.
Councillor Carragher.
Amendment.
Councillor Michael Coyle.
Amendment.
Councillor Cullen isn't here. Councillor Curry, are you on the call, Councillor Curry? I think he might have dropped off. Councillor Duffy.
Motion.
Councillor Farouk.
Motion.
Councillor Feeney's not here. Councillor Fisher.
Motion.
Councillor Fotheringham.
Amendment.
Councillor Goldie.
Amendment.
Councillor Goldsack.
Amendment.
Councillor Gourley.
Motion.
Councillor Graham.
Motion.
Councillor Hume.
Wasn't ready. Amendment.
Thank you. Is Councillor Tom Johnson on the call? I think he might not be here. No, Councillor Jones.
Motion.
Councillor Paul Kelly.
Motion.
Councillor Lennon.
Amendment.
Councillor Logue.
Motion.
Councillor McGregor.
Amendment.
Councillor McManus.
Amendment.
Councillor McNeill.
Motion.
Councillor McPake.
Motion.
Councillor O'Rourke.
Motion.
Councillor Quigley.
Motion.
Councillor Reddin.
Motion.
Councillor Shevlin.
Motion.
Councillor Stubbs.
Amendment.
Councillor Annette Valentine. Nope. Councillor Watson.
Any motion?
Okay. Have I missed anyone? Because I know there was a few members have been dropping in and out of the meeting. If that's everyone counted, the amendment has 10 votes, the motion 18, so the motion is carried.
Thank you, colleagues. Moving on to agenda item 24, pages 225, 228. We're looking for approval. Again, an item that was here. It's back because of an issue in the cost. Ian Martin.
Yes, thanks, Convener. This concerns the proposal to reallocate land at Dykehead Road in Airdrie. It was considered at committee in March. However, following the committee decision, it was brought to light that there was a £300,000 abnormal development cost in relation to the relocation of the two pitches on the site, which had not been taken into consideration in the abnormal cost claim at the time. So we're seeking approval to adjust the transfer figure for the site by the £300,000, which would mean that the sum paid for the site by housing would be £1,140,000 instead of the £1,440,000 that was originally reported.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Agenda item 24, I'm looking in the chat bar, there's no questions. Can we agree the recommendation is for approval on page 225? Yes, yeah. Item 25 is on page 229 to 238. Again, we're seeking it's a contractual approval. Chris Sullivan. Chris, are you taking this one?
Yes, Convener.
On you go, Chris.
Just to address the members that this is a standard transactional report in terms of the procurement for the maintenance of biomass and the supply of material for our biomass sites across the council. Obviously, we went through the normal tendering process through the procurement journey, and outlined within the report is the recommended suppliers and maintenance providers. The reason there's two lots within this paper is simply because it's also associated with our PPP estate, which is only the provision of biomass materials to support our biomass sites, but also the maintenance across our wider estate. Members are just asked to consider the recommendations outlined within the report. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Agenda item 25, colleagues. There's no questions in the chat bar. The recommendations are on page 229. Are you happy to agree those recommendations?
Agreed.
Yeah, yeah.
Agreed.
Agenda item 26. It's an item here for noting. It's actually for contracts awarded below committee approval. There's actually only 3 items there. I don't think we need to go into any detail on there as such, but I'll gladly take any questions. Is there any questions for anybody on agenda item 26? There's nobody in the chat bar. Can we agree the recommendations on page 239? Thank you. We now move to exempt the public from the meeting. Andrew, can you make the necessary arrangements for that to happen?